So yes, I know this is supposed to be a talk about offbeat Europe. It's so offbeat, we've actually moved into Asia, but never mind, it kind of feels like Europe. It's a trip that takes us from Erzurum to Trabzon in a circular route that goes right up to the borderlands of Armenia and Georgia. Stunning trip into the Kaçkar Mountains, and it's beautiful. So we start in Erzurum. Erzurum is a town that dates back to prehistory, the first millennia BC. But from there, it has passed through Roman, Byzantine, Iranian, Armenian, Seljuk Turk, Mughal, and Ottoman control. But it was the Seljuk Turks in the 11th and 12th century that have really left their mark with this main citadel, which is now a museum, and the twin minaret mausoleum and the royal tombs. So this is a good place to start after your longish flight from London. We have a day here before we head towards the west. And that gives me a chance to talk very quickly about Turkish wine. Now, I'm not going to try and spin you a yarn that Turkish wine is the best wine in the world. It is not. But it does have an interesting wine history, and the wine is getting better. So as we travel east, we go across the Anatolian plateau that, of course, goes towards Armenia and Georgia. And Georgia claims that it is the birthplace of wine, with evidence of viniculture dating back 7,000 years. Turkey itself has between 600 and 1,200 indigenous wine grapes. It is the fourth biggest producer in the world of wine grapes, with 1.5 million acres of land put down to grape production. But it is only 33rd biggest in terms of the production of wine, because of course it exports most of its grapes to be made by its neighbors, turned by its neighbors into wine. But there are local people that are beginning to realize that there is money to be made in producing good wine. And so the wine production is improving and increasing all the time. Probably the most famous Anatolian wine is Buzbag. You'll find that in shops and in restaurants. We were drinking it. It's relatively inexpensive at about £8 a bottle. And it's a good full-bodied red wine made out of 2 indigenous varieties. So that's the wine. It's also worth saying that certain restaurants and hotels may not serve wine. So our guide always checked out, and if we needed to buy some for the evening, we would buy it and take it in ourselves. And they were always very, very happy for us to drink our own wine. Now you get to the cultural highlight, Ani, the 10th and 11th century capital of the Armenian Empire. This sits literally right on the border between Turkey and Armenia. On where the church is Turkey, the river running through, and Armenia on the other side. And of course, sadly, because of the lack of communication between Armenia and Turkey, Armenians are not allowed into this part of Turkey, and so they can't see what is their old capital. Lucky for us, we can, and it is an amazing sight. It's set over 14 square kilometers, so it takes quite a long time to walk around, probably 3 or 4 hours. There are some extraordinary ruined churches. It used to be, back in the day, it was of course on the old Silk Road, a very famous town, very important town. It was home to 100,000 people and was known as the town with 1,001 churches, and was very, very advanced. It was until the Mughals kind of first knocked it down in 1236, and then it had an earthquake a few years later in 1319, which kind of rather knocked the stuffing out of it and never really recovered from there. But it's an amazing place. You can see it even has a troglodyte cave town to one side of it, where people would go in times of persecution. This is our group standing on top of the citadel, looking down over the site. And you can see the great Anatolian plateau behind us. From there we come to Kars, where we visit an Armenian church, which is now a mosque. That often happens in this part of the world. And we stay, rather bizarrely, in a Russian mansion. Now, between 1878 and 1917, the Russians ruled this area. They built a mansion. We stay there now as a hotel, which is kind of rather gaudy, but interesting and comfortable. And from here, the walking starts. So rather like Italy, the kind of culture, if you like, or the high culture is at both ends of the trip. So we start with Erzurum and Ani, then we have the walking. And the walking here is fantastic. A little bit more challenging possibly than, certainly than Greece. You know, you're getting up to some reasonable altitudes on this trip. This is called the Satan's Castle Walk. The castle is actually from about the 12th century, built by the Georgians when they ruled this area. The walk is fantastic. You can go right up into the castle, we come back out, we walk up the side of the mountain to the left, and then we get onto the plateau, and these are our views. Absolutely fabulous views, enormous great vistas. And we walk across here all day down the other side to the place where we're staying. We'll also walk through the Kaçkar National Park, where we'll see these beautiful lakes, stunning walking through forests, little villages we'll go through, stop off for lunch at a trout farm where we'll eat some lovely trout. All the while you're kind of passing these old relics of the Georgian or Armenian times when they were in control here. We're right up on the Georgian border here. So, you know, some Georgian churches in perfect state, they've been renovated, others still in a state of disrepair. And then in the Kakar Mountains, we do some really lovely walking. We stay here for 2 nights and we go up into the little tiny hamlets, meet local people. This chap was absolutely charming. He insisted on getting his bagpipe out and playing for us. Social distancing wasn't really something he understood, and he insisted on getting everyone dancing. And we had a great time with him before carrying on walking, stopping off in little villages to have our picnic lunches, picking berries from the bushes, swimming in the streams. And again, as I say, like Isabel's, Dom's, or Christoph's and Christina's, this is the special place for me. It's probably the least luxurious on the entire trip. You can see the bedrooms are not exactly 5-star, but the place is magical. You're in the middle of the forest, on the side of the mountain. You're the only people staying. It's a father and son that own it and look after it. They're great cooks. You have fabulous meals here, and it's just a really cute place to stay, which we do for 2 days, giving us a full day's walk up into the mountains. And from here we head back down, or I say back down, we head down onto the Black Sea coast and to the Sumela Monastery. The Sumela Monastery is, again, one of the great cultural highlights of this trip. And it rather kind of links the Greek and the Turkish trip, because, of course, this was originally built as a Greek Orthodox monastery. It was founded back in the 4th century AD. Its present form was constructed in the 13th century. It was an active monastery until population exchange between the Greeks and the newly formed independent Turkish Republic in 1923. Unlike the monasteries of Meteora, the Sumela Monastery is now just a tourist attraction. It's not an active monastery anymore, given obviously where it is. It's a 45-minute hike up. We don't take the road. We actually walk up through the forest. You can see here. It's a beautiful way to get there. And when you get there, it is absolutely stunning. Incredible old churches in there. And wonderful frescoes, which were originally painted in the 11th century, but then renovated by Russian monks in the 15th and 16th centuries. And from here we head down to Trabzon on the coast, which again has some fascinating Ottoman architecture, a great place to do our last minute shopping, last night dinner,